Item number 4, as you know, is the acceptance of the SAFER grant, which will effectively today allow us to reinstate the firefighters that were slated for layoff July 1. We spent a lot of time seeking that grant, not only in the fire department, but in our Office of Management and Budget, which is the primarily responsible entity in the city for making sure grants are not only received, but that they're properly implemented, and so we don't have, at the end of the grant position, a liability because of something that was not done. So I want to thank Yolanda, the budget administrator, and Matt, the budget analyst, for the work that they do in coordinating a lot of this work. Again, it's a team effort. I mean, one person doesn't do all of that. I think it's the epitome of a lot of hard work on the part of a lot of people. But the end result is what we're after, and we're results-oriented in our efforts to accomplish these things. So as you know, we were capable of, or we were fortunate in securing a grant that will allow us to restore those positions, but more importantly, it allows us now to take a look at how we're going to fund public safety on the fire side, and I'll talk about the police side after they're done, but on the fire side, and there are two issues that you need to be aware of. Number one is that obviously today is the first day of our fiscal year, which begins the implementation, and the other thing is that the budget that you adopted in May is the recommended budget that we have in place, and we knew all along that the SAFER grant could be a factor in that budget, a positive factor, because it allows us to continue with the implementation of the budget as drafted. The charter, as you know, also designates the chief financial officer, finance director, whatever the title might be, with the responsibility of putting together the budget, obviously with the assistance and with the coordination of the budget coordinator. And so July 1st obviously marks the beginning of the implementation of the spending plan. And so now we are approaching July 1st, and we have $2.3 million more than we had when we started. And that has raised a lot of legitimate questions. And so I've asked Tim Morales, the Deputy City Manager and Chief Financial Officer, to talk a little bit about the financial implications of this money and how it will be implemented. And I've also asked Phil Ludos, Assistant City Manager for Public Safety, to talk about the implementation of the resources and how it will affect the fire side of the budget. Keep in mind, this is all from the standpoint of the budget directed at the fire side, because it was very specific about what the budget or the grant could be used for, and what could or could not happen as long as we were recipients of the grant. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Morales.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to touch a little bit broader than just on the grant, but as the manager stated, today is the first day of the fiscal year, and we have a balanced and approved budget, and it's the approved budget by council. And as we stated many times during the council budget hearings, the budget is a living document. Therefore, there will be a lot of changes during the year, and we expect that, and we hope for that to happen. Recent discussion regarding the budget has been, I think, centered on additional funds that we have, and many of the additional or available funds are due to the SAFER grant. There's three areas that I believe have been a focus of the discussion, and that includes unemployment that has been allocated to the fire department that will no longer be necessary because of the SAFER grant. Unemployment in the police department that may not be fully utilized due to a lower number of layoffs than initially anticipated. And finally, what we've heard about from several entities, the Economic Vitality Incentive Program increase in revenue. First, I'd like to state that the unemployment funding in the budget was always thought to be a one-time expenditure. It's not a sustainable due to other items that are going to come up in the future. In fact, we know today that we will have retiree increases in fiscal year 2015 of approximately $2 million. So we know those other costs are going to go up, and other costs including healthcare, retiree healthcare, and those types of things. So it's not a sustainable long-term plan for the budget to count on having those funds available. With regards to the fire department, we had budgeted $234,000 for unemployment, and that was to fund the unemployment expenses for the 15 firefighters that were scheduled to be laid off effective today. Those funds are no longer necessary due to the grant that the city was awarded by FEMA. However, there are a number of items that the grant does not cover. If you will recall, one of the things that was discussed is the closing of fire stations. I don't believe we're going to close 2 stations due to this grant. And any station that is kept open is about $30,000 to run. So those funds will have to be funded out of these unexpended funds. Additionally, there are other items that are not covered by the grant that we will have to identify funding for. And the Assistant City Manager for Public Safety and the Budget Officer will have to work on those plans along with the Fire Department command staff. But just a few items that I can think of off the top of my head include overtime, individual equipment, capital needs, and as I already mentioned, costs associated with operating additional fire stations. The second item that I mentioned is the police department unemployment. At the time that the budget was required to be delivered to council, there was a higher number of police officers to be laid off. Through retirements and resignations over the past few months, that number had decreased to 4 officers. We had originally budgeted $202,000 for unemployment in the police department. With the layoff of 4 officers, we can project an expenditure of about $62,000 for unemployment costs, leaving us a projected amount of about $140,000. At the same time, we have unbudgeted expenditures in the police department. You'll recall from the last meeting, the manager stated that one of the largest costs that were unbudgeted were payouts. Those payouts are related to the resignations and retirements that we had. Chief Lipe has identified 11 possible retirements or probable retirements in 2014. One of the things that I did was go back through and look at the cost to fund a retirement, not just the pension, but when, due to our contractual obligations, when any of our employees leave, we have to pay costs associated with remaining paid time off and comp time. Just so happens that the public safety personnel have the highest accumulated banks in the city. During the last 6 months, police officers that retired had an average payout of almost $38,000 per officer. And the highest payout that we had was almost $60,000. So just taking into account the average of $37,648 with 11 officers, we will need $414,000 in payouts. Now, if you recall the number that I stated we budgeted for unemployment, leaving us $139,000, we're short on that amount by about $274,000. And we have to make adjustments throughout the year to make up for those funds, and that's particularly important this year because we no longer have fund balance. In previous years, let me take you back a little bit. Up until about 2 years ago, we always budgeted for these projected retirements in every department. We stopped doing that about 2 years ago and funded them as they came, because the alternative to not funding them as they come is less personnel to begin the budget year. And that's the reason why we do that. But that can cause problems towards the end of the fiscal year. So we're left in the hole still there, $274,000. And then we come with our EVIP increase, which was highly touted by the MML, I'm sure you all heard. But For us, a 5% increase represents $175,000, which is a nice increase, but compared to what we've lost over several years, it doesn't replace much. And with our total general fund budget, that's about 0.5% of all the revenue that we use to fund the general fund. So in all likelihood, that funding will be directed to public safety, but unfortunately, it will be utilized to pay for the payouts. And that will still leave us with $100,000 to identify to fund the remaining portion of the payouts. So I just wanted to take a moment to kind of put the budget in perspective and realize that there are holes or items that need to be funded that we always have to identify savings for, and it's no different this year. In fact, there's even more emphasis on that, and with these two items, particularly with regard to the SAFER grant, that gives us a head start on funding that for the year end. Are there any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morales, and for Mr. Earley for giving us this update on these issues that have been brought to members of council in the past couple of weeks. My question is, and I missed the approximate number of possibilities at the beginning of 2014 of police officers that would possibly be retiring.
The chief has identified 11
Okay.
possible retirees, and just for your information, I don't believe there are any identified in the fire department for the upcoming year. We had one recently retire within the last 2 weeks, I think.
That's correct.
And this may be the last large wave of retirees for a few years. We have had a lot retire recently. When I ran the last 6 months in the police department, there were 9. And there were several resignations, but I didn't include them in the payouts. But again, when it is somewhat surprising sometimes when you see some of the payouts, even for short-time officers, but that's something to be recognized.
Thank you. The other question I have is with the fire department. Can you, or maybe our assistant manager of public safety, talk a little bit more in depth when you mean by capital needs?
I think he'll talk about that when he comes up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morales. I guess it is what it is. If contractually we owe them the money, we pay it. However, what do we do going forward? Because I'm of the opinion that if you work in public safety, that if you have vacation time coming, or is this a combination of vacation time and sick time?
We don't have sick time. We have paid time off. It's
Okay.
been converted to over the past several years, but it's a combination of paid time off and comp time.
Okay. I would think that in a stressful position like that, that people should take their time off in order to get away from the job, and that, maybe contractually we can't require, but in future contracts we should look at forcing people to take the time off in lieu of pay. You use it or lose it, because those are very stressful positions and you need to get away from it for a while. And if you're working year-round without taking any paid time off just to accumulate it so that when you retire, you've got it, that's counterproductive. So I guess I guess I'm speaking more towards the HR people than I am to you, because you have to, deal with what you got.
I just count the beans.
So, Mr. Jordan, I'm really talking to you. I'm really talking to Mr. Jordan in order to help alleviate this problem from raising its head in the future. Because, I understand why you don't put it budget for it, because then you'd have to lay off more people. I understand that. But, there's got to be a solution to the problem so that we don't keep shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of your points, and that will be something that Dennis works with. But, it's kind of, we're kind of in a reversed position than what we used to be, 3-4 years ago. We used to get a list of potential retirements from the departments, and then maybe 25% of those people would leave, so we'd have maybe a little surplus there. And now it seems that when we aren't budgeting for it, every one of those people go. So it's kind of a double hit there.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
How long is that good for? We originally went to 35, I believe, in the fire, and that was sustained, we were hoping to sustain that for, in the ballpark of 5 years. Is that correct? 55, 35.
Right.
We're hoping to sustain that for 5 years. I mean, financially, we're hoping we could do that. With the SAFER grant, though, that just buys us 2 years?
It's a 2-year grant that has 15 fire personnel, firefighters. So that would get us
At
to
the end of
50.
2 years, we're going to run into a very critical situation where we may have to cut 15. Because if the SAFER grant runs out, I mean, I want to look down the road here and what we can do to offset that. It's a 2-year, 15 can stay, but at the end of 2 years, 15, if we can't afford them, we can't afford them. I just want to, I want people to keep that in mind, that this is a 2-year that we're looking at.
Yep, yeah, it's a 2-year grant, and I think what it does is, and Phil will speak to it more, but it gives you an opportunity, it gives you 2 years to plan your future, basically. And I think, given the discussions that we had with the fire union, I believe their command staff will be working diligently to find alternative ways to deliver the service and schedule and those types of operational issues.
No doubt about it. They're great. I do have a question for Phil when we get to that one. Thank you.
I think I would add to that, though, that over this next 2 years, our focus is going to be a lot broader than just on, reforming the way we deliver public safety services. I mean, that's what the discussion has been about now ever since Mr. Ludos has been on staff. And so that'll be an ongoing discussion, because every place we can find additional savings or cost containment puts us in a better position to enhance our service delivery system in public safety once it is fixed. I mean, once it is to a point where we can actually identify positions, fill those positions, and sustain those positions. And that's what, we have to do. We can't do that now, but that's the ultimate goal.
Questions for Mr. Morales? Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.